Namaste, my friend. Welcome to Bhakti Yoga Conference here at Harvard Divinity School. Super excited to be back for day 7. My name is Happy Jack, the founder of Happy Jack Yoga and a student, a Master of Divinity student here at Harvard Divinity School. And we're excited because the theme of this event is grace in an age of distraction. And there's such an opportunity for us to cultivate grace. And one of the ways to cultivate grace externally, internally, is through kirtan. So we're very excited to bring our guest on in a few moments. And really our intention. So we've got, I think, over 1,700 of you have registered now. Of course, a smaller subset of us are live, but many of you are watching the recordings. And really the intention is to connect you with beautiful souls, monks, scholars, yogis, thought leaders, and today a musician coming from the tradition of Bhakti Yoga. And so I am going to get ready here and spotlight our friend. We'll do a little intro. This is Bali Rico. Bali is a multi-instrumentalist, author, lyricist, and academic. He is one of the co-founders of the international kirtan group Mayapuris. Born in the US to Colombian parents, he and his younger brother Kish spent their formative years living in ashrams in the sacred land of Mayapur, West Bengal, learning the traditions and music of ancient India. Bali's mridanga playing is fiery and unique, helping to create the Mayapuri's signature sound. As a lyricist, Bali's flow mirrors the intricate rhythm of a born percussionist, with the thoughtful prose full of insight, philosophy, and personal reflection. I love it. And truly, Bali, you're just an all-around awesome guy. You know, we've had the chance to be on retreat together twice at Chant Camp at Super Soul Farm. And, really, you're, from my standpoint, a little bit of a celebrity. And at the same point, I feel like you're willing to share your heart. Anytime we were together on retreat, you're willing to make time and to connect and to give me guidance. So I certainly look to you as a teacher. Your wife, Dunya, who we get to meet next week, is also an important teacher and guide in my life. Truly, they are a power couple, but today we get to spend some time with Bali. The title of today's session is Kirtan, the Call of Bhakti. And my friends, if you are ready to get started with Bali Rico, throw your arms in the air and loudly chant Haribol. Awesome, Bali. It's so beautiful to have you here, my friend.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here with you guys. Good to see you again, Jack. Every time we've connected, it's been, yeah, you have such a sincere and gentle soul and such a sweet nature. When you asked, I was like, of course, a chance to hang out with you and chat. That's no-brainer.
Well, we really appreciate that, my friend. And so we yesterday we heard from scholars from Oxford, and we've heard from monks who have, been dedicated their lives to monastic life. And you, I mean, you've lived the monk life, but now you're a family man. You got a beautiful wife, beautiful children. But really your main service, my understanding, is kirtan, is music. And so we get to talk about kirtan today. We have devotees on the call, so some of them, of course, they know exactly what kirtan is. There's also people on the call who've heard the word, but don't really know, what it is. So could we just start with letting us know what is kirtan?
Yeah, kirtan it's actually something that exists across all traditions, all spiritual traditions, have some form of communing collectively to the divine, to God. Whether it's indigenous tribes from the Americas or Australia, or you have these beautiful cathedrals from different parts of Europe, or if you go to a Baptist church from the South and you have this like beautiful black gospel choirs, these are all actually forms of kirtan. Kirtan means to glorify, or it comes from the root kirti, which is glory or to praise. And our particular tradition, we give it the word kirtan, and essentially it just means to sing or to chant um, divine names or even spiritually infused topics or qualifying statements expressing love and devotion. And this act of singing these empowered names, it acts as a way to purify one's heart and to reveal one's true identity, being uniquely and eternally connected with our divine spiritual source. And ours looks a particular way because it comes through the lens of India, meaning we have Indian instruments and a lot of the things that we're singing are in Sanskrit or ancient Indian languages. But essentially, every tradition across the world, every faith, every spiritual community has some form of collective prayer, and we would call that kirtan as well.
I was on mute. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for setting that context. And I want to go off script just for a second here. We are going to focus on kirtan, but I find it so helpful when we get to know our speakers, and we got a taste of it through your bio. And obviously your life is 40, close to 40 years or something like that. A lot to be said, but could you just give us a taste? Because before we went live, I mean, you were sharing you had a very different upbringing. Like some of us are middle age, just discovering bhakti, just discovering kirtan. This is something that's been a part of your life since birth. Could you give us just a little bit more of your story, um, to up
Yeah.
until this point?
So, my parents are Bhakti yogis. They joined the Bhakti movement that, what we would call the Hare Krishna movement in the West in the late 70s, early 80s. So Bhaktivedanta Swami, who I'm sure has come up throughout the conference, known in our tradition as Srila Prabhupada, brought this Vaishnav tradition, which is Vaishnav meaning, worship. The primary focus is devotion to Krishna or Vishnu. Brought it to the West in the 60s, and through his students, it kind of like spread. My parents are from Bogota, Colombia, and they met the devotees who were kind of what they call opening up South America. They're like, oh, we're opening up, they got to Mexico and Venezuela, and then reaching out through the different countries of South America. And my parents encountered it. It totally changed their life, like it did to many people. And so they were devotees before I came onto the scene. I was born actually on Balaram Purnim, which is Balaram is a form of God or divine, is Krishna's brother. I was born on Balaram's appearance day, which is a special full moon in August, and so they gave me the name Balaram Chandra, which is Chandra is the moon, the full moon, because it is a full moon day, and he is described to be beautiful. Like when I was given that name from birth, and then my brother, who is in the Mayapuris, he's 1 year younger than me. His name is Krishna Kishore, so we're two brothers, Balaram and Krishna, and we grew up in farm communities in the States. So there was a farm community just like we have like New York or New Hampshire in the like ISKCON communities. They would take these special places from the Vaishnav traditions, and they'd say like New Vrindavan or New Talavan or New Ramanreti. So there are all of these special places in Krishna's in the Srimad Bhagavatam, or specifically Krishna Lila or Gora Lila. Um, and we grew up on a small farm, New Talavan in Mississippi, and then moved to where we are now in '89, which was it's in Florida. It's Alachua, near Gainesville, which is New Ramanreti, and we lived, kind of like in one sense a normal childhood. Like I had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle pajamas, which maybe some of us from that generation, '80s and '90s kids can relate to that. You know. Um, and played with toys and had I played local in my local rec soccer league. I had Hot Wheels and they're like a regular kid, and but at the same time, like we our my first kind of memories of my life are going to the first, like you were talking about how you're living in a temple, and uh, that Mangalarti, that first prayer that happens at 4:30 in the morning. It's the first service that happens in a temple. I remember, and this was, I might have been 4 or 5, our parents, because that, it wasn't a question of whether you went. Everybody went. It was kind of like, of course, if you're sleeping in, you skip the 4:30 and you go to the 7:30 service, but definitely you don't sleep in past that 7:30. Culturally, it was just understood. Everybody goes to the temple. That's how you start your day, 4:30. And if you have some extenuating circumstances, you can make the 7:30 one. But I remember our parents, we were too young to be left at home alone, so they would just wrap us in blankets and kind of like put us in a little like bundle, like we had like a little den inside the back of the temple room, and the lights are all off. The only lights are whatever it lights up the altar, like the shrine where Krishna and Radha are. And we would kind of like blearily open our eyes, see we're in the temple, and you fall asleep to the sound of the service. And in our tradition, every service, the 4:31, the 7:31, the 11:31, the 4:31, the 6:31, and the 8:31. So all of those services, they all have kirtan, because our primary form of worship is they have the puja, and the puja is always accompanied by kirtan. And in between those services, sometimes kirtan as well. So at 4:30, the first thing that happens, they open up, the altar, the temple, or the shrine, and then a kirtan starts. And that was me as a child, just kind of like in dozing off in slumber. And then when we went to school, most kids, I think they still do this, where you have a homeroom, right? Where you like before first period, you have homeroom, and that's where everybody like shows up, and you kind of like take attendance. Our homeroom was Guru Puja. So the seven, well, it's Darshanarti, where they first opened the shrine at the temple at 7:20, and our temple it's between 7 and 7:30. That was our school, we went to a private Krishna school, where attendance was taken. Like everybody shows up there. We do kirtan, so the whole first, Guru Puja in leading into the kirtan, and then we would stay for the first part of the Bhagavatam lecture, so where they would do the scripture talk, and then from there, then we'd go to first period and do our, math and science, and kind of like a regular. Then it was just regular school from there on out, and we would have kind of scripture study every day, and mostly that was the Bhagavad Gita, or sometimes the Bhagavad Purana, or the Srimad Bhagavatam, and then sometimes on special days the CC, or the what they call the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and then just a regular math, science, history, spelling, um, and it was on the temple property. So we had a little school, and it was all just Krishna kids, and our teachers were devotees, members of the community, and our friends were all that. And then after 2 or 3 o'clock, then you'd go and be a regular kid again. If it was in the mid 90s and you're watching Power Rangers, or I would then, soccer, the weather gets good, and then we'd have soccer season, and so we'd go to soccer practice 2 days a week, and soccer games on Saturday morning, and so, and then of course, like being connected with the Christian community, that it's festivals all the time. Basically, it's some either saint or divine personality's appearance. Like every week there's something happening. And sometimes it's like back to back. You have, like, we call them like festival seasons, where it's like, oh, it's Balaram Purnim and Janmashtami and Radhashtami, all like, so we're at the temple all the time. So the temple is central, is the hub of where all the devotees live. It's kind of like we our life was like, if you only showed up for Sunday service, you were kind of fringy. Like, whereas now, like, in obviously we have people who are devout practitioners, but somebody who goes to church every Sunday, they're like, oh, you don't, they're like, oh, I'm there every Sunday. They're considered quite devout, or like very adherent. That's considered a high standard. For us growing up in ISKCON in the 80s and 90s, like if you only showed up for Sunday service, it's like, where are you? Like we're here every day. We're here 5 days a week. Well, really, basically, we're going to the temple 6 days a week, maybe Saturdays off. But if there's a festival, you're there every day. And so it was so central to our identity. And so I did grow up in the States, and I did have, Pokemon or whatever. I'm a little too old for Pokemon, but that kind of thing. But the temple and doing kirtan was daily. It was every day. And then as we got older, you know, my like, we'd want to listen to our music, and my dad would be like, okay, it's fine. You like whatever, like hip hop. Like I like hip hop. He said, you can listen to that, but first you have to do kirtan. Like if you fill the house with this like sound vibration, and you guys do your spiritual things, and then you can kind of like you can do the other stuff as well. So we had a very balanced type upbringing. We had a lot of things that were what you would consider monastic, and then we had um just like we were regular kids. And then at 14, so we grew up like that, and me and my brother we would do kirtan with each other, my brother Kish, and the harmonium and the mridanga and the kartals, that we had them at our house. And it's funny, in our culture, you know, if you play, like everybody has those instruments, and everybody plays that. Like if you say, "Oh, are you a musician or do you play any instruments?" They'd be like, "No." And then, but actually you'd watch them playing mridanga, harmonium, and kartal. It's like, wait, you play three instruments? And they're like, oh, everybody plays mridanga, harmonium, and kartal. Like at least to a basic level. It's like saying clapping. Can you clap? You don't ask somebody like, can you clap?
Yeah.
Everybody claps. So it's like kartals, it's like clapping. Of course. Well, I don't count that because it's like clapping. And it's like mridanga. Well, who's gonna like if there's a temple service and somebody's doing kirtan, everybody there more or less can pick up the drum and hold it down to a certain degree, or lead one or a few prayers on the harmonium. So for us, it was kind of like we didn't grow up as musicians because our all of my friends, our entire classroom growing up, they all played mridanga. Up until I was maybe 14 or 15, everybody was on the level. And then you'd have some kids who had a very sweet voice, or oh, he's a nice drummer. But in general, it was 100% attendance, 100% participation, 100% like every of our class had a minimal or like a base level proficiency. And then as we got to our teen years, then you start to get people who have their particular interests. Some people are more interested in the scriptures. Some people start to focus, like we have artists, and then meaning like people who like decorating the altar or the deities or making these kinds of designs, and then other people who really enjoyed kirtan. And once we got to our teen years, 14, all of the private Krishna schools that were in the West, they more or less shut down. And so my parents sent my brother and I to India to a boarding school, which now it's crazy to think that that was so normal for my generation. I have kids now, and the thought of being like, okay, you're 14, we're gonna send you to another continent, and you're gonna go to this boarding school, and in August or whatever for the fall semester, we'll see you in March. Um, and there's no Skype. You know what I'm saying? Like there's no Zoom, like I'll catch you on Zoom in 1999. The internet was quite fresh. It was a fresh little daisy. Um, so it's a bit it's a bit wild to say that when we were just kids, 13 and 14, we went to an ashram, but that was normal. It wasn't like a shocking thing to do for my generation, for kids born in the Bhakti tradition in ISKCON in the 80s and 90s. You would get to a certain age when some kids went much younger. We actually went when it was, I think, a little bit more. Yeah, as a teenager, as a 14-year-old boy, it's not like mommy and daddy. You know what I'm saying? You're kind of like you're starting that teen high school phase where I believe having mentorship and paternal and maternal figures outside of the home is quite healthy. But still, it's insane to think that we went on a plane with actually a mentor of ours who is a monk, and we were in this ashram there was 50 other boys, ranging from about probably 9 or 10 years old up till about 16 or 17. It was an all boys school. There was a headmistress and a principal. And this was in Mayapur, which Mayapur is the birthplace of our particular form of Vaishnav culture. So there's many Vaishnav cultures in India. Our Vaishnav culture, which is the Gaudiya culture, the birthplace of that is in Mayapur. And that's where things kind of, for us, took a shift because we went from kind of living a regular, like I'm just like a regular American kid. I'm a, Latino kid growing up in the States. And so I have many like shared experiences with a lot of people in that kind of demographic to now I'm living in a mud hut, like a straw thatched roof, you know, next to a banana garden and rice fields in West Bengal in India. So we lived there for 2 years. And we had like a regular high school education. We went through this like affiliated with like a Cambridge secondary school, and we did like we learned what's called in our tradition it's like Bhakti Sastri, whereas we go through all the main Bhakti texts and we dive in deep. You go through like it's like an actual curriculum where you study it. There's a lot of growing up, we did a lot of memorization of verses, which is kind of normal, like what you would learn at like a Sunday school. This was like a deep dive with teachers for particular courses. There was a whole curriculum, and then you have to test out of it, like to get your certificate, to get like a diploma that you've studied the primary Bhakti texts in our tradition. And I had a regular high school education. And then that was where we started, like the people who really started having those inclinations towards kirtan or towards different things, they really start to manifest. So my brother and I, and then of course you go to India and whatever we would call a passing proficiency in kirtan and music in in the West and in India, it's on another level. Like the base level of musical artistry, because you're there at the birthplace of Gaudiya Kirtan, is much higher. When we would go to those services in the morning, we it was the same. We were once I went to like in America after a certain age, it's like, okay, you're not living a monastic life. You don't go to the 4:30 service, but the 7:30 everybody's, assumed you're meant to go. In ashram in India, we were up at 3:30, and you take a shower with a hand pump like water outside in like a thatched little bathing area, and then everybody gets ready and then walks. It wasn't uphill both ways, but we would definitely, it was like probably like a mile walk to the temple, and we would go to the 4:30 service every day. That was a part of our curriculum to attend that. And then you're doing kirtan, and then of course the exposure to like to Gaudiya, to Bengali, to Indian, meaning like it has been like this for hundreds of years, centuries of this percussion and this singing and these musical styles. That's where we really got exposed and immersed into kirtan, and then where we started getting a little bit of that taste, and you develop musically, and also what they call it the word ruchi, which is like a taste. I actually have like an affection for this. It started in those years, and then we graduated. Kind of 9/11 happened, so a lot of things changed. Our parents brought us back. Even though my brother's high school education hadn't been finished, they're like, we're just gonna finish it off in the West. This was a weird time to be overseas. And then we came back and kind of had like again like back to like a regular life. I went to college, I got a degree. My brother went to college, and at the same time we came back and we started a kirtan group. And actually our group wasn't a traditional kirtan group. We would do drum presentations. Like we learned the mridanga, and you learned the school of music, the school of percussion, and we would put on presentations. Like but in India, they'll do this thing where the teacher, kind of like a recital, I guess, where what your students would learn, and then they'd go in the community or to their parents, and you'd get 20 students all doing the lessons together, like a music recital. And they would do that with just the mridanga, and the teacher would have the cymbals, the kartals, and then they'd all go dun, 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 and you'd have all these drums, and it does something. It does I mean, it does something universally, because rhythm is the tongue of every culture has some form of rhythm. Um, so to hear those, but for people who have that inclination, it unlocks something where it's like, whoa, this is moving me in a special way. And so we brought those back. Me, my brother, and then our friend Vish, who can share many of these types of experiences going to ashrams young, started doing presentations in our community. And it was like, oh, these kids, they came back from India, from Mayapur, and started, they're showing us their like what they learned. And we chose as our name the Mayapuris, which is like the people from Mayapur, because that was where we were from, where this tradition was from. And it kind of were like, oh, we're gonna do a Mayapuri's drum presentation. And for these big festivals, we were 16, 17, 18. We started that, and then slowly we would kind of get around and do kirtan more. And then kirtan really started to kind of take root in our generation. So kirtan is so central to the Gaudiya tradition. It's so central to bhakti. And like I said, we grew up with kirtan being a part of every service we would do. And even every you go to a birthday party and everyone's like, okay, we're gonna do some kirtan and then we'll have cake. So but then it really it is already quite central to every practicing member in our tradition. But then you get the people where it's like, okay, this is the core of their identity and their practice. Like if there's any excuse to get together, it's to do kirtan. Starting at those like late high school, early college years, we were doing kirtan basically like my roommate. It maybe people might know Amala Harinam, so he's famous all over the world for doing kirtan. He was my roommate, like a college roommate, meaning like we're all splitting the rent and all that stuff. And then so me, my brother, and Amal, and then our neighbors are all people now who you'll see them like on posters, like please come to this kirtan event. This particular like wonderful singer who's been doing kirtan for 30 years is coming. Those were our college buddies. We would get together and every Wednesday night, every Friday night, every Sunday at the temple, any festival time, getting up in the morning, you come home from school and you sit down and you jam. And we would really, really dive into the practice of kirtan. And we had our like kirtan heroes, Ayendra Prabhu, who was responsible in a big way for the kirtan, what we call like we consider like a kirtan renaissance, where kirtan, which has already been central to our tradition, now is really getting like propelled and pushed forward. You know, like now we have kirtan festivals. When I grew my first kirtan festival happened, I was already in my this was 2008. My parents joined in whatever in the 70s and 80s there was 20, 30. I went 20 years of my life and there was no such thing as like a kirtan mela. It was you had kirtan at festivals and it might have been very central to it, but there wasn't festivals where you were just doing kirtan. That first happened, in kind of honor of Ayendra Prabhu, who had been doing kirtan 24 hours a day. He started a group that they would just do kirtan 24 hours a day from 1986. It's still going to this day in the Vrindavan, the ISKCON temple in Vrindavan. So there was a little shift in our cohort of people who it's like, I'm doing kirtan all the time. I'm studying, I'm going back to India to live kirtan. Like we had people, I was coming back to the West, and then they were like, I'm going back, like I'm going to India and I'm gonna live in an ashram where we do 6 hours of kirtan a day. And then you come back and spend the whole summer and it's just one festival after another. So we have this circuit of festivals that happen every summer, the Rath Yatra festivals, where it's like New York and San Francisco and Toronto and all this stuff. And we'd all go to these festivals to meet up with our friends. Um, Meet up with our friends and what did we do? Like the festivals going on, Radhanath Swami would be there, Sachinanda Maharaj, Bhakti Tirtha, so all of these like luminaries in our tradition, and we were in the corner doing kirtan. It was like, oh, we're all getting together and there's this amazing like discourse and we're going to be doing this presentation, and we're like, where's the kirtan happening? So it was almost like a nuisance where they're like, we love you guys, but it's too loud. Can you do this somewhere else? So there would be the festivals happening, and then we would have our little pocket of us just churning in there. And then you started to see many people like the talent, the artistry, start to really unfold, and some of the people who already had that inclination by those years of kind of cultivating it in those either in private settings in our home for our little personal shrines or at these big festivals you started to see. And then that happened like late high school, early college years. And then by the time we're 23, 24, 25, kirtan really, like there's a renaissance inside of our movement where it becomes central. We have our first kirtan melas. And then the people start being like, hey, you guys run this. Like, this is your festival. Like, we're going to get the New York crew, we're going to get the Florida crew, we're going to get the California crew. We're going to do 24 hours straight of kirtan. You guys have a 4 hour slot. You have a 4 hour slot. You have a 4 hour slot. You guys do it amongst yourselves, and then okay, I'll take 30 minutes, you take 30 minutes, and we just would rock it. They're still there. You can look it up, 24-hour kirtan 2008, the the first one, and that was us. That was kirtan, kind of what we had been doing and cultivating for years and years internally and inside of our little pockets. It started to really spread out, and then now it's almost like every temple. Alatra has a weekly 6 hour kirtan. We have a yearly 24-hour kirtan festival. Every temple has some form of like, kirtan is very central to what we're doing. Actually, all we're doing is kirtan. There's not going to be much talking. We might have some food at the end, but basically, like if you're showing up here, we're going to do kirtan for minimal, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 hours.
Mm.
Come and join registration. Now it's very common. It's very typical to have this kind of experience. But that really came quite late in our cultural history of Bhakti in the West. And I just realized I've talked about my history for the last like 20 straight minutes, but it gives a little bit of context of not only my own experience, but this is reflects a lot of what's happening in the kirtan world and in the bhakti world currently over the last, we'll say, like, we'll call it 15, 10 to 20 years, where kirtan is now kind of like very, very, it's given a big platform.
Mm. I love it. Amazing. Just your average upbringing, right, guys?
It's just normal, yeah,
Yeah.
typical.
Yeah. I love it. But at the same time, truthfully, I love that your parents and you and Dunya together, you have this intention to still create a, quote unquote, a little bit of a normal upbringing for your children. I remember when I worked with your wife Dunya, and I remember on one of our calls, I was like, do you guys celebrate Christmas? And you guys like, yeah, of course. We're doing Christmas and having presents, and I've met your kids, and when you were talking about your kids and you and your brother as kids, I saw something on Instagram. It's kind of silly, but just the other day it said, whatever you do today, do it with the confidence of a 4-year-old wearing a Batman t-shirt. And I don't know why I thought of that when you were talking about Power Rangers and stuff, but that's what I think about when I see your kids, your little guy. I mean, just
Yeah.
running around in that environment with music, in good association, surrounded by kirtan. Um, I guess two things. One, I just want to plant a seed in the next few minutes here. Can we get a taste? Can Mridanga, will that come through in Zoom? Is there a setting so it works? Are you familiar?
I mean, it's funny. I have, and you can never have too many drums. I have
Mm.
three, but I would like, they all, it's like, yes, I can definitely bring it over here. This is our little, every home should have its own little personal shrine. That's you
Ah,
know, our little
beautiful.
setup over there. Um, but yeah, I'm glad to bring it over and show you guys. Hopefully they're all tuned up. The weather has been a little bit unpredictable. We're in Florida, so it's warm, but we've had some random cold and wet days. Our kids are, they're getting a lot of what we got. And my particular, like my parents they wanted us to be happy. My dad, like I got my doctorate. My dad never pushed me towards that. I don't even think he quite understood what I was studying until well into it, where he's like, "What is it that you're doing again?" He wanted me to be a good person, and he wanted me to be a good devotee. He wanted me to have a good heart, and that I could have been, washing dishes for the rest of my life if I had integrity and faith and a spiritual life, and they gave me a good childhood and allowed the us to really like dive into the beautiful parts of bhakti. And I think kirtan is really it's really impactful because it's like music, you know. Kirtan just means prayer, and because of our tradition, it's accompanied by music, and the music that comes out of India is so phenomenal, so sophisticated, so beautiful, that it's kind of like it's a delight. to participate in it. And you've seen my kids, they're just like, this is amazing. This is like a little party. We're having a little party and there's live music. Um, so that's what we got, and we're passing that on. You know, it's kind of like my daughter's growing up. Yes, she gets Christmas, and she's, you know, gets a little whatever the new toys are. You know, Ninja Turtles I guess aren't relevant, but whatever the new thing is for the kids, they're getting all that stuff, and unicorns and princesses. She gets like princess outfits and Elsa and all that. But it's like, yeah, and we're giving you bhakti and you're doing kirtan. And when we do kirtan, as much as possible, we want you to be there. We want you to soak it in, and we give them their little ear protection headphones so that we can protect their little ears. And but my son, you know, he has his card dolls, he has his own little pair, they're just his. And my daughter's, she and it's so, you know, there's I like brought all these verses to kind of like talk a little bit about the scriptural or base from our like wisdom texts. But you know, there's one thing that it says, you know, there's a lot of difficulties about this age, which is the age of Kali, the modern age, the Iron Age. But one of the things that's very special is that transcendence can be achieved through Kirtan. Um, you know, you know, this every age has had its dharma, meaning its particular spiritual practice that leads to enlightenment. And in this particular age, the age of Kali, kirtan is the dharma, meaning, you know, you can still like meditation and all of these other practices that exists particularly in our tradition or in the dharmic traditions. Ritual, yajna, puja, meditation, yoga, they are still paths. But this particular one of kirtan, the mind is so difficult to control. We have such short attention spans. We have such a short life. Our inability to breathe and be disciplined and be austere. Um, with kirtan, you're able to kind of still maintain your who you are and where you are physically or emotionally. Like you can't live in the forest. And like how in the Gita, when Arjuna is telling Krishna, it's like, how am I going to control the mind? The mind is like a flickering flame, you know. And Krishna is outlining like different practices, and ultimately he's like, but Krishna himself is like, bhakti is the easy path. You know, it's kind of like there's a lot of obstacles in in the other yogas, and this is kind of like it's almost like a shortcut. And then kirtan being like the primary limb of bhakti practice is even easier. You know, it's kind of like, listen, just show up and sing and listen, and the process will work. And so we had that where it's kind of like we had all of the spiritual practices, but it was just like let the kirtan do its thing. It's the medicine, you know? And so our kids, we're giving them their regular childhood. And then whenever we show up, we're there knowing that the power of these sacred chants will do the work. You know, starting 4 years old. So by the time they're 20 something years old, they'll have 20 straight years of just exposure and immersion to these ancient practices.
That's amazing. What a beautiful upbringing and that you're creating. Why don't we get a little taste? Because we'll take a Q&A in about 10 minutes. And
Sure.
I've got lots more good questions, but just so we have time, let's
Yeah.
get a taste.
Let me grab a drum. Hold on one second.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Live from Alachua, Florida. Mridanga demonstration. Let's see which one's in tune. We're going with blue. Nice one.
Now all of the Harvard Divinity School can see the fluffy slippers I wore to the presentation.
Perfect.
So kirtan is the act of kirtan is congregational collective prayer. Um, we do it with musical accompaniment. There's this concept of, you know, like nada yoga, where sound is a spiritual has spiritual potency. That's why we participate in this concept, that this Shabda Brahman or Nada Brahman, where the absolute ultimate absolute reality or truth can exist um, in the form of sound. Even like you know, like Jack, when I say your name, um, it's kind of just the flesh of my mouth and my tongue and my throat kind of moving and constricting and modulating, and then the there's a vibration of my vocal cords, and then air is expelled, and then this that sound is heard. But when I say that, it's like it carries you. That sound vibration of just the j and the ah and the air and the k, like the all of the epiglottal and all that stuff. It's all it is kind of like physical interactions, but it carries metaphysical properties. It carries your personality, your voice, maybe a memory, your our friendship, our history, who you are. It carries your whole childhood and your state of being. And so these are metaphysical things. Physically, you can't touch them. Um, so if that exists on the material plane with just a name of a friend, it exists on the spiritual plane, and on the spiritual plane, it exists to an even higher principle, where in our tradition, the names of the divine, they actually are non-different. Just like Jack, that sound to a certain degree is not different from you. It carries you. These spiritual divine names also carry the divine personality and our ultimate source, God. Um, so that concept of Shabda Brahman, or the ultimate absolute reality or truth or Godhead inside of sound, is why we sing these names, because by proximity to that and by the utterance of that, essentially we're bringing God into our life and into our practice. And so even just the act of uttering or chanting these names is its own potency. And then we decorate it. Just like when if you're doing puja or you're decorating a shrine, that act of ornamenting it with flowers, or the act of when you're cooking, either if you're cooking for, say, how in our practice we offer the things that we cook to God, and then we partake in the remnants, or if you're cooking for somebody you love and you put a little bit of cilantro on the side, that presentation, the act of ornamenting the dish, that's that's the music that we do. The names, the names are the dish. The ornamentation is the music. So this music acts as a way to decorate the act of chanting. And so normally we have in the let's get this light. Normally we have you have two kind of components. One is melody and one is rhythm. Um, and so melody is what is explained through like the raga system. Each melody is meant to carry a particular mood, and then the beat, you got to have a beat. The beat is what everything is done to a rhythm, and how we can have actual music, because otherwise, if there's no beat, how do you follow? So this is a mridanga. This is a kol, is the official name. We call it a mridanga. Kol is this particular, because mridanga just means clay body. There's many mridangas that come out of India. This particular form of it, where it has a clay body, is the kol, and it comes from West Bengal. It has two sides, high side and a low side.
Is there a zoom setting? Because I don't think it's coming through just right. Is there
Oh,
like a music setting?
oops, I don't know what I just pressed.
Because I know when we had Gauravani, it wasn't coming through at first, but then Kishori Gopi did something, and her harmonium and vocals came through. Because otherwise, it picks up either voice or drum, but not both.
Let's see, audio. Let's see what it says.
So audio settings, is there some like
Oops, audio settings.
music or something?
We will see. I've heard of this, and I remember
Might need to, Felicia said might need to turn off noise reduction. I'm not sure if that's it.
live performance audio. Live performance audio recommended for multiple instruments or voices in different
Yeah,
locations.
now you're in the right area. Yeah, yeah. So Jay and Pip are both saying original sound for musicians or something.
All right, original sound for musicians. Okay. All right, I've clicked it. You're
Give it
gonna
a
have to.
give us a tap again. We'll see. We don't hear it at all. No,
No?
there's no drum. Huh. And someone else said original sounds for audio. original.
Audio settings.
If not, we might have to. We'll link to a YouTube of
Yeah,
you
sure.
rocking it. If
No
it's
worries.
if it's not going to come through. Well, I know we
Yeah,
have questions coming in anyways. Well,
sure.
would you give us this then? Even though I know you're the percussionist of the Mayapuris, but would you, just because the holy name is so powerful and potent, and you just spoke about it, would you share either a little invocation or a little Maha mantra, a little taste of something? Because I know that'll come through, and
Yeah,
we've got questions ready to go.
sure. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much, brother. Well, we've got a question on deck here coming in from Barrie, Ontario, Canada. So let's get Ian and Heather on the line. Welcome,
Hare
friends.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, it definitely would have been great just to sit here for an hour and listen to Kirtan. I could definitely listen to you, Bali, talk for another couple hours for sure. You're so engaging. So thank you for your time. I actually have a question kind of about your upbringing. It kind of came through to me. I'm from Canada. I grew up here. So there's a lot of spirituality kind of going on. And like you said, people go to Sunday, everything seems to be okay. They could be considered devout. But I found in my own journey trying to find God, love, and connection. Obviously, I have a deep connection to love of Jesus and Krishna and just human beings who've probably been here to help serve and love and give people. But anytime I went to certain organizations and religions or even teachers, it seemed to me that a lot of people weren't practicing what they were preaching. Not necessarily hypocritical, but definitely something like that. So in your life growing up, because obviously Bhakti is a very beautiful religion, organization, community. Do you find that even you as a parent now, or even growing up, that people really kind of stuck to their word and did have integrity? How, like, for me growing up, people are smoking cigarettes saying you shouldn't smoke, and you're like, so there was a
Yeah.
lot of that for me growing up. So it was very hard for me to trust a lot of adults growing up and believe that they knew what was going to help me be happy, because in my heart I didn't connect with what a lot of people were sharing. But for you growing up in that community, because I'm fairly new to the Bhakti community, and I absolutely feel so welcome and so loved. I would love to hear how that kind of looked for you.
So
That makes
it's
sense.
interesting you bring this point up because I've actually discussed this with Jack, kind of the the need for us to have guides is so important. You can't learn without a teacher. I mean, you can to a certain degree. But if you want to get a black belt in a martial art, you have to have a teacher. And likewise, in the spiritual traditions, if you want to get a black belt in spirituality, you should have a guide. Now, unfortunately, um, humans are imperfect, and it's very hard to place your faith in another human being because if they are flawed or if they err, you know, it affects you. And I can't say that that wasn't a part of our upbringing. We had so many spiritual leaders that let everybody down. We'll just put that, we'll say that gently. And it caused huge upheavals in our community. Um, and I think about it all the time, like, you know, I have my heroes, and to me, they never strayed. And and that list is very small, but I hold on to those teachers and those guides. It's a very small list, and it's really difficult to encounter somebody who can hold your faith, that faith that you have. Like, I'm putting my heart in your hands. I consider you a teacher of mine, and please don't let me down. That for me, it's hard, and I'm very kind of skeptical by nature. You know, I have a soft side, my bhakti side, but I also have a very like kind of left brain side. So for me, I constantly am feeling like I'm judging the
Mhm.
people around me.
Yeah.
Um, and so luckily I've been blessed to have a very small but a very real group of teachers who um, I feel have been able to protect and uplift my spiritual journey, even as so many others have we'll say let people down.
Yeah.
One of the things it's funny, when you say like, and then I show up at this institution and I get super turned off by my experience. One of my main kind of services to the kind of like the community, if we want to call it the yoga community or whatever, is we do like outreach. I connect people to bhakti. I share bhakti. I grew up in this tradition. I had amazing teachers. I had like a curriculum of these bhakti texts, and I've lived it. And then I share it to people. And then when people ask me like, oh, I want to know more, the last place I recommend them to go is to a center for bhakti.
Right.
I'm like, I am so worried about sending you to a temple or to an institution because I don't know what they're going to give you. These people are flawed, and they might turn you off. They might say something that will totally damage your spiritual journey irrevocably. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's like this will never be like you've done so much lasting. There's been so many experiences, I'm sad to say this, where it's like you've done lasting damage to this person's bhakti by the way that you've acted. So most of the times when people say like, I want to go to a temple, I'm like, like where do you live? Like maybe just connect with such and such person because I
Right.
can entrust your journey with them. You'll be in good hands. Um, and that's quite sad. And I think that that's not something that's our tradition. I think many people can relate to that, where it's like, I don't want to send you there because I don't know who's running the desk. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? I don't know who's manning that station right there. So all that to say that yes, you have to be very careful in who you are accepting and taking guidance and wisdom from. And and that, like, if it is a part of your spiritual journey to find a spiritual guide, then if you put that out in the atmosphere and you qualify yourself, it's kind of like almost those ancient like stories or fables where they'd go to seek this master, and then the master would have some way. It's like you're not even qualified to begin the journey of seeking a master. So when you qualify yourself, the master will come to that, and they might give them some like menial task, like, oh, count the trees in the forest.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, like you have to have some like, it's like saying like, I want a good person, I want a good partner. And it's like, but I'm super flawed. And it's like, well, qualify yourself and then a good partner who you want, this idyllic person that is gonna like, I want this amazing, like supportive and nurturing, man or woman in my life. And it's like, are you an amazing person? Are you amazing? Who are you? Do you deserve this in your life? So kind of like earn it first. And I truly believe that for people who take their spiritual journey seriously and really try and improve themselves, like I want to be qualified to meet a special person that can guide me in my
Mhm.
spiritual journey. That person will manifest. And there are real enlightened people from many different traditions that are walking this earth. And if you work hard at it, and if you I this I feel like we can say this because this is like a bhakti said, like pray for it, pray on it. It will come, and it will take its time. And then when that happens, once you have that in your life, like I have in my life, I always have this person that whenever, like, because the sea gets choppy, man.
Oh
And
yeah.
when that thing is rocking, you have that lighthouse where it's like, I might be not fixed or feeling instability in my spirituality and in my journey, but this is an anchor. This person is like holds me so that I and offers stability. And I feel I'm very fortunate. Not many people are blessed with that, and I've, you know, it was given to me. I'll put it that way. I don't necessarily think like I earned it. I got to this place and then I was like, then I like I was it was I inherited it. Maybe I got it from, maybe it's a past life. Maybe I did something really amazing in my past life and that's why I'm able to have this. So maybe I did do it, pat myself on the back, previous birth. But really I can say that I didn't qualify myself, but I was still given that, and I hope that you're able to encounter that in your life too.
Well, I absolutely have, because I've known Jack for 5 years, and he was gifted to me at the time I needed it.
There you
And
go.
yeah, it was beautiful, right?
Awesome.
So I definitely know what you're talking about, and I do believe you did something in your past life. If you were born to parents in Bhakti, that's
Yes.
absolutely amazing. So sending your parents some love for allowing themselves that freedom too. So thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. Thank you
Beautiful,
for your
beautiful
question.
Hare
question,
Krishna.
beautiful response. And thank you for your kind words, Ian.
Of
And
course.
we're
Thank you.
peers, but we're peers. Like yeah, I've been your yoga teacher, and thank you for the kind words. And also, like, I mean, I'm a fallen. I got a lot of work to do. You ask
Yeah.
Bali's wife. She's my therapist, and she'll tell you I got lots of work to do. But what
Of
Bali
course.
and also what Bali is talking about, and I don't think you'd mind me saying Bali because we're glorifying them. But some of the names that you mentioned to me of people that you really trust are actually speaking at this conference. Radhanath Swami being one of them. Sachinandana Swami opened it up. We actually spoke with Vaisheshika Prabhu, unfortunately, who couldn't make it. But we're very close connected, Ian. With some of these people
Yeah.
that are true lights that we can look towards. But thank you for that reminder, Bali.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Beautiful. Well, let's send the love, high vibes. Ian, Heather, representing. Nice one. Canada representing. Awesome. Well, we just have a couple minutes left, so maybe I just want to say, Bali, thank you for your time, man. Thank you for, we went way off script. I know you had like
Yeah.
a Shastra plant, you had verses and text and philosophy, but I think it was so rich and helpful to hear your story. And even though in a way, like probably majority of us couldn't relate, it was so inspiring to see, we couldn't relate in the sense we didn't, grow up in India and in ashrams, but it was so inspiring to see, what's possible and to see the impact of having that kind of devotion in your life, and then you obviously are paying it forward to your children. And now we've been had this anticipation. We almost got to experience the Mridanga, so we're gonna have to go on retreat with Bali, or you're gonna definitely check out the Mayapuris on Spotify and YouTube and all of that good stuff. What is the best way to stay connected with you? You've written a book, by the way. He's an author, which is pretty awesome. I've got a copy of his book. But what is the best way that we can stay in touch with you, my friend?
So my name there, Bali Rico. I'm on socials. You know, please stay connected. I was given this kind of like, I was given this, I inherited this from my parents, and I'm always happy to share it in different settings. I met Jack through something like this, where it's like, hey, we want you to share what you were given. Now share it with this group of people. And I see Pip there. Hi, Pip. Also, we went together to India, and it really is my pleasure to share. I feel very honored that you would um, invite me to such an esteemed event with so many like luminaries and dignitaries. And it's probably better I just did some storytelling, because these people are actually really, really super advanced and qualified scholars and practitioners who have dedicated themselves to this path. And I'm kind of riding their coattails. I'm here to I have a unique experience being given this, and then obviously the artistry and the musicality of it, and being able to practice kirtan and it and things like that. But maybe, yeah, I think that we connect with stories. So hopefully me giving a little lowdown of the environment that I grew up in, and maybe the context of the Bhakti tradition in the West for many of us. Hopefully it helps a little bit.
It was super helpful, and appreciate your honesty too. Like coming out being like, hey, you know, leaders, the community leaders haven't always been perfect, because that's relatable and that's real. It exists in this tradition, in every wisdom tradition, in every environment, in every group of people. So thank you for your honesty, your love, your friendship, my friend, and everybody else who's here. We've got another double header tomorrow, so join us tomorrow. But this was Bali Rico of the Mayapuris. So let's send all our love and high vibes, and we'll see you soon, my friends.
Thank you so much.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Hare Krishna.
Namaste.
Krishna.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you.